And now, our first session, Women Changing the World of Technology. It's the right place to start because technology has been the most disruptive and transformative force for change in the last 50 years. And we can all relate to how it's changing our lives every day so far. But this panel is not going to bring you up to the technology of today. It's going to focus on the changes that talented women tech entrepreneurs are making, and these women will blow your mind. Our first panelist is Lisa Dyson, founder and CEO of Air Protein, a company that creates food from air. Air Protein is a World Economic Forum technology pioneer company reinventing how food is produced to sustainably feed 10 billion people by 2050. Lisa achieved the Global Citizens Award from the United Nations in 2018, was one of Inc. magazine's top 100 female founders in 2019. She makes physics and string theory understandable, so no wonder her TED Talk has received 1.5 million views. Please welcome Lisa. Our next panelist is Stacy Flynn, CEO and co-founder of Evernew, the inventor of a wide range of regenerative fiber technologies, which enable entirely new products to be made from discarded clothing, not just once, but multiple times. Stacy calls herself a textile and environmental justice advocate. She's a recipient of Fast Company's World-Changing Idea Award. Welcome, Stacy. Also joining us, Linnea Cornad-Falke, founder and deputy CEO of Stockholm-based Einride. Einride was founded in 2016 to revolutionize the road freight industry, which accounts for 7% of global CO2 emissions. Through autonomous electric transport and intelligent freight mobility platforms, Einride is changing road freight for good. Working with GE Appliances, Einride has deployed the first cabless, autonomous, electric truck on a US public road. No surprise, Linnea is Forbes 30 Under 30 All-Star. Please welcome Linnea. Our final panelist is Deb Jackson, co-founder and CEO of Plum Alley. Deb founded Plum Alley after 2 decades with Goldman Sachs and is changing the field of venture capital by investing in firms with at least one woman founder. Deb, thank you for your help in shaping this panel, and we are so glad you are a member of the Women's Forum of New York. Welcome, Deb. And our moderator, also a member of the Women's Forum of New York and one of the smartest women I know, Susan Bird. Susan works at the intersection of innovation, technology, and language. She is CEO of WF360, which specializes in global conversations among business leaders to provoke new thinking and new solutions. No surprise, she's also an avid TEDster. So welcome to Women Changing the World of Technology.
So, good morning. Woo. Are you eager? Raise your hand. Are you eager to start this opening session of a terrific conference? Yes. Good, because we are too. Now, we all know that technology is changing our lives, but in this session, we'll talk to women behind technologies that are making this happen. Each of them is leading a company that's positioned to disrupt an entire industry. I mean, an industry globally. And if they and their work has not yet changed your life, hang on, it will. So now, if you want to, you may submit questions on the conference app. Open the app, scroll down to the Q&A section, put in Women Changing the World of Technology, and type in your brief, operative word, brief question. I'll do my best to get to those because these women have a lot to say, and you'll want to hear all of it. Now, you also know that all of us weighed in on this topic via a pulse poll. You were asked, are women getting a fair share of the investment pie? And here's what you said. Is it up there? Yeah. So you said, well, 65% of you said, no, we're not getting a fair shot. So I have to ask, global technology investment is exploding, and you're saying not so much for women. So we need to know if this is correct, if you're right, and we're going to get the real number, the accurate number a little bit later, we need to know what can be done and what role you can play in changing this. So hold that thought, because first, there's a threshold question, at least in my mind. We have to ask, well, why? Why is there this discrepancy? Is it because these women don't choose big issues? They don't have big ideas? They aren't doing things that would disrupt an industry? What's wrong here? So are they not really doing the cool stuff? Well, you have the answer to that set of questions right here, because we're going to ask these women, what was the issue that got you so wound up that you had to have a big idea, find a company around it, and then create the technology to fix that problem? Their answers will create the context in which we can then judge for ourselves just how urgent is it that women like this get funded ASAP. So Linnea, I'm going to start with you. Your company, Enride, which I understand is the third company you founded, has grown from a Swedish startup to a global company all over Europe. It's also in the US, and it's now all over the Middle East. There's talk of Enride's earning unicorn status. For those of you who may not know, a unicorn is a privately held company that has valuation of over $1 billion. So congratulations, Linnea. So Linnea is making trucking sustainable. That's the industry she chose. Interesting, right? And it's based on your convergence of AI, machine learning, autonomous driving, and electric vehicles. How does that work to literally disrupt the trucking industry?
I mean, I will start by saying I'm still a bit surprised when you say that I'm in the trucking business. Like, I still haven't got that out right. But I mean, as we heard it before also, the freight industry, the service market is responsible for 7% of the global CO2 emissions. And what we understood was that it's so highly inefficient, so there's so much you can do with new technology. And it's also an industry that hasn't really changed much in 100 years. So of course now, having all of these new technologies, we're able to create something better. And I think what we're seeing also now is a real momentum for this, also where you can see electric becoming actually cheaper than using fossil-based fuel.
So you blew me away when you said that for all the trucks that we all see out there on the highways, that only 20% of them have something in them. Did you know this? So it's like the taxi industry before Uber came along, right? Mm. So how does that work, and does that have to do with the efficiencies and thus sustainability that you're talking about?
Well, it has to do partly with because the industry is so fragmented, and I would say it's actually less on average than 20%. So as you're saying, most trucks runs empty, and one of the biggest reasons for that is, of course, because it's not digitalized yet. This industry is still very manual driven, so they don't talk to each other, and so there's so much inefficiency in the system. And this is something that we believe can be fixed. And I will add to also that I would argue that it's impossible to go electric without going digital first, because there's so much more complexity into electric operations than digital. So that's also, we're on the journey to transform this industry, both with digital technology, electric technology, and then also autonomous, so self-driving technology.
So I know that a lot of people may be thinking, well, this would be challenging because they're thinking of autonomous cars, which have their own set of challenges, we know. But you said, you used a phrase that I hadn't heard before, you carry freight repetitively, and you compared it to the way the railroads were originally built. Could you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the great things with working with freight is that, and also working on the base load, is that a lot of the freight is actually that's being shipped is very repetitive, which is great applications for autonomous. So what we're doing together with, for example, General Electric Appliances here in the US, is that we drive autonomous vehicles from A to B, where it's very, this is within limited facilities in this big industrial areas, and it's actually has carried over 5,000 pallets now in a commercial use, so we're very excited about that. And I will say also in addition, we just had a news coming out here on Tuesday that we are, together with DP World in the UAE, launching the biggest project for electric autonomous transportations. So we're super excited to see this technology also reaching scale.
So would you say this is a big enough idea and that it's
Yeah.
really disrupting an industry? Wow. Okay. So we're not done yet. I know that tomorrow's fashion panel will address sustainability to some extent, but Stacy, I want you to explain the epiphany that you told me about, that you had one day in China, something that led you to invent the company that you now run, founded, Evernew. What was that? What happened?
So I've been a textile and apparel specialist for the last 30 years, and in 2010, I was working for a startup in Seattle making clothing out of recycled plastic waste. They sent me to China to find sources of manufacturing, and this was the first time I'd gone into China without working for a large company, and I went into the subcontracted areas and saw how we get to low price. My colleague and I got out of the car. We were standing right next to each other, and we couldn't see each other. The air quality was so thick with pollution. We got to our meeting room, and midway through the room to the ceiling was this cloud from outside that we were sitting under, talking about how we could do business together. So it shocked me awake, and I decided on that trip, I was there for a month, I decided on that trip that I would not make one more piece of fabric that was not done in a way that was compatible with the environment. So that's why I started the company.
Okay. Huge. Okay, it's a great idea, but how does it work?
So we essentially take, so we're textile engineers by trade and by training. Our first technology takes cotton garment waste. We essentially liquefy it, turn it into a pulp, and then we extrude it into new fiber, and we make new garments. So this is one of the garments we made with Pangaea. All of our garments are designed to be very high quality, very high performing, and fully recyclable. So when we're done with it, we can take it back through the same process and do it again. This model is way more powerful than the current model, which is make it and throw it away. Now we can recycle these polymers up to 5 times commercially, which means there's a 5x utility on the business model.
So, is this cool? So when we talked on the phone recently, I said, so this is very interesting, but have you done it? I mean, is it actually real? And Stacy said, well, wait a couple of days. And then I got a package, and in the package was this hoodie, which is so soft, so beautiful, so highly textured. I think every celebrity is going to want one. And I want one too. Maybe I can keep this one. I'm not sure. I have to behave myself. So this is really amazing. So you also told me, though, that you are going to go directly to the customer, like Tesla.
Well, you know, it's interesting. We worked in partnership. One of the coolest things about what we do is we work with some of the most cutting-edge makers in the world. So we were working with a 3D knitter. Those hoodies are knit to order, zero waste knitting, from a company called Variant 3D out of Malibu, California. Our fiber is a technological marvel. Variant is a technological marvel, but when we developed the first prototype, it looked like a bunch of engineers designed it, because they did. So then I called...
No offense to the engineers
Yes,
in the group.
no offense at all. But then I called Christopher Bevins, and Christopher is a prominent streetwear designer. He started Nike's streetwear division. If you look up Christopher, he's a very incredible human. And I asked him if he would take our technological marvel and turn it into something people would want to wear against their skin. And it was such a brilliant collaboration.
So he did this?
He designed that.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah.
Very good.
Yep.
So how great an idea is this? So these are mission-driven people, right? Big idea, big response to that idea, very gutsy. And now there is Lisa. With your PhD in physics from MIT and your Fulbright and your earlier entrepreneurial ventures, this girl has been around, right? So you were inspired by NASA to build a mind-blowing venture called Air Protein that makes food out of air. How does that work?
Well, first of all, very carefully. But if you imagine all of us are on a spaceship to Mars. We'd have to figure out how to feed ourselves without acres and acres of farmland. And so one of the ideas that the NASA scientists came up during the Apollo space program in the 60s and 70s was capturing the air that astronauts would breathe out. All of you are breathing out carbon dioxide now, and then feeding that to a culture, very similar to a yogurt culture, or something that you'd use to make cheese or beer or wine, feeding that to a culture that then could create nutrients. And then you'd eat those nutrients, you'd breathe out the carbon in the form of carbon dioxide, and so create a closed loop carbon cycle. And that was really why we were first interested in that. And the process is very similar to making yogurt, but the difference is we feed the cultures elements of the air, water, and energy.
So you said you work in the microbial kingdom. I kind of like that. Can you describe that a little bit, or do you think you already have and I just didn't get it?
So, plants also recycle carbon. Plants use water, air, and energy as well. But this is a way, using these cultures, they can grow in a matter of hours. So instead of waiting months and months and needing acres of farmland, in a matter of hours, you can have your nutrients with these microbial cultures.
So you told me that you are talking especially with a lot of interest. First of all, you said we are breaking our planet with the way food is created now because we don't have enough land to do this. And I said, well, is that really that big a deal? You said, yeah, it is a big deal because everybody wants to at least eat 3 meals a day, and there are 8 billion of us, and it's going to 10 billion, and we don't have the land to do this. So, and I said, well, but we do have different kinds of food, and you said, well, we kill, what'd you say, 70 billion chickens every year, not counting the eggs, and that's not enough. So we have an environmental issue. So I'm just blown away by this. But you said that the food industry is slow moving. So how does that impact what you need to know that you need to make happen ASAP?
Yeah, I love my spinach and my kale. I've come from a family of farmers. We're from Louisiana, my mother's side of the family, and we need our farms. But as we go from 8 billion to 10 billion people, right now we've cleared an amount of land equivalent to the size of South America and Africa combined. And that's to feed us, to feed the animals that we eat, for the animals to graze, and it's just a massive industry. And that industry contributes more greenhouse gases to the environment than the entire transportation sector. So as we get 2 billion more people on the planet, how are we going to feed everybody, as you said, without breaking the planet? And that's really why we started Air Protein, to be one of the solutions to do that. There's regenerative agriculture, there's a number of different approaches, but how do we do that is a question we need to ask.
So remember when we started the session, and we talked about the poll that we took and your answers to it. And we said that there was this threshold question, why women aren't getting funded. And I asked, well, is it because they aren't doing cool stuff and they aren't building things that have real impact and that we care about, like food and how we get around and what we wear? So it looks like we've answered that question, right? So that brings us back to what do we do about this? So I have to turn to Deborah, because she's the expert here. After your years at Goldman Sachs, on Wall Street, and a lot of investment experience, you decided you had a pressing issue, and that was this issue of investment distribution. And you said, I've got to found Plum Alley, and it's going to specifically invest in tech companies founded by women. When I asked you, well, how real is this disparity issue? And you said, I got a graphic that'll make it all too real. So I think they're going to put this graphic up. Tell us what that graphic means. You
Yeah.
see that? Can you see it?
Okay, so first of all, I just want to give you all a number, which is that women founders get approximately 2% of the venture dollars that are deployed. So, and we had 146 billion that was invested in the last 12 months, and only 2% of that went to women.
So did you see that little yellow bubble, the little
And
tiny one? That's what she's talking about.
This is why, a part of the reason about why we have that problem of lack of funding for quality women entrepreneurs. The flow of capital is really controlled by, guess what, white men. And so you can see here that the population in the United States alone is 330 million, and 87 trillion has been deployed in AUM, and women make up only about 2.7% of the decision makers allocating that capital. So we have two problems. One, we don't have enough money flowing to the amazing women founders, but we also have a problem with women are not decision makers about the allocation of that money. And there's plenty of data that shows when women are in the room to make the decisions, more money flows to women.
Surprise, surprise. So maybe that explains a little bit why investors are not knocking down the doors to invest in these women's companies, and the fact is there are a lot more like them who are doing really incredible stuff. By the way, when we talked about why, the why question, what's the success rate of women-led businesses, tech businesses, as opposed to those led by men? I would think it would be tougher for women because they're choosing such big issues that are important to all of us, but what's the answer?
Well, the interesting thing is very little data is kept on performance by gender, but there are a few studies that have come out. First Round Capital did a breakthrough study pointing out that 67% of their portfolio companies with women founders outperformed all male teams. And so those numbers are striking. And there's also data showing that women use more with less money. They get less funding, they go further, and they show profitability sooner. So why wouldn't we want to invest in women? And you know, one thing I'm very honored to have invested in all three of these companies. And I have to say, at this time, with everything that's happening in the global world, with war, with the treatment of women, the losing of our rights, etc., here is the bright spot. This is why I do what I do. It is so optimistic to meet women like this and hear their vision and see what they're bringing into the world. So yes, it's about supporting great women, but it's also about the technologies and the innovation that they are bringing in our world. We are creating the future that we're going to have right now. And so if we're not supporting and investing in these women and a whole slew of others that are out there, we're not going to create the future we want. And this is one ray of hope that I have, to see that we can be a little bit by giving our capital to these extraordinary women and many others like them. We have a database of 6,000 women that meet our investment criteria in technology, bringing forward good innovation that we need to make the world better. And companies where we think we can actually make returns and wealth creation. The other part of the challenge here is, why are women not in the positions where you make wealth creation? Which is two ways. Number one, you found a company that's successful. The other way is you invest early in a company that's successful. So if you're not an entrepreneur, there's plenty of ways to cast your vote with your dollars and to create the world that we want to see and have the returns.
That's great. So full disclosure, I'm also an investor in these companies. So we're going to talk about how really universal is this challenge to women. Now, maybe you think the ones sitting up here because they've founded these companies and they are growing them and they are creating stuff of which we're all very, very envious and thrilled for them. Let's just do a quick rundown. I know that, Lisa, you told me that when you talk to investors, they're not as excited about paying for infrastructure, the plants that you need to do this microbial magic, but that they're excited about R&D. Can you want to explain that a little bit? Is there a difference in the way they approach what you're up to?
Yeah, I would say there's different types of investors that are interested in different things. And so initially you have the venture investors where there's huge promise, and we have great investors, Plum Alley, Archer Daniels Midland, Google Ventures, GV, Barclays, a few others, and Ford Foundation. And so they're really interested in kind of kicking off the innovation and kind of starting it. And then for companies like ours, where you have to build factories and plants, you have to go to a different set of investors. Venture investors typically don't like to invest in that. And so for us, we're leaning heavily into non-dilutive funding for that. It just so happens that with the Inflation Reduction Act and the kind of other things that are happening now, there's opportunities there, and that's where we're leaning. But for venture investors, they typically like to invest not in infrastructure, but in other things.
Well, now, how about you, Linnea? Because you had told me that actually people are happy to invest in the infrastructure, but weren't so excited about R&D. But lately, that's changed too, maybe because you've achieved so much scale? What's the deal?
Yeah, I think right now a lot of people are very excited about the electrification, and you see the potential in that. And so we have seen an increase, or actually it's been a bit hyped over the last year, that there's a lot of investors wanting to go in to build out the infrastructure, and especially then again, electric infrastructure. When it comes to R&D, I think last year was a bit of a challenging market dynamics, and so it was not the same type of appetite. I do think that as of this year, we see that the appetite for R&D is coming back again.
Okay. Stacey, when we were talking about this, one of the things you said that struck me was you said, I don't think I want to be known as a female founder, because I think that might limit me to attracting money from people who are investors who say, oh, female founder, yeah, I have a little fund over here for that. I take care of those people this way. You want to be somewhere else in the big picture. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I feel like if you have a great business and you've got solid economics, you should qualify for investment, whether you're a man or a woman.
Yeah. Yes. Woo-woo! And how do you find people respond to that?
The market is incredibly challenging right now. Since last year with the bank failure, a lot of investors are sitting on the sidelines. We find ourselves in a position where we're too far along for the early stage investors, maybe not, and not far enough along for the larger growth equity investors. So we're kind of stuck in the middle. So we've had to, luckily I've never overfunded the company, so we are prepared to ride out situations, but it is incredibly challenging. I am on a mission to get the funding we need to get this facility set up, and I'm not taking no for an answer.
How great is that? So Deborah, you have experience not only with the investments that you're making with Plum Alley, but you know a lot of the other people in the VC world. And I'm starting to think again about that question that we all responded to on the Pulse poll, the way it was stated and the way we answered it. I'm thinking this question should be repositioned. This shouldn't be about being fair. It should be about being smart. That is, the smart money should be following people like this. So we have to talk about how we're going to make that happen. Can you respond to that? How do we get smart? You mentioned the pink ghetto. Maybe you want to talk about that a little
the
bit.
pink ghetto,
Yeah,
yes.
the pink ghetto.
One of the things when you focus on women entrepreneurs or women investors, in the venture community, that's associated with, maybe philanthropy, maybe those companies are not high tech, maybe they're cosmetics or consumer products or handbags, whatever. And so women can very easily be put in what I call the pink ghetto. we don't want to be defined that way. We want to be defined for the value that we're bringing forward, for the innovation, for the improvements to the world, for legitimate business models that can go global, for the ability for investors to get a high return, to outperform other companies, to make wealth when it's deserved. And so it's important we all step up and be part of this, because if we don't do it, no one else will, and the great women won't be funded. But it's unfortunately, again, falling to women to help solve the problem. But we have the means, we have the brains, we care deeply about where the world is going, so why not put your money in an investment for return and to make the world what you want it to be? So I hope I answered that.
I think so. So, you know, there are a couple other things that occur to me now that we're sitting here talking and I've heard all your answers together, that we didn't talk a lot about who you're selling your stuff to. And I know you said, Stacy, that you want to sell directly to consumers, and you're talking about actually operating on a fairly local level in the sales of it. Is that true, the Tesla idea?
You know, I think it's funny because we're going to innovate on our model until we find the right path. So that's the one thing that we are remaining agile enough to figure out where the best market opportunity is. We work with over 80 brand retail partners around the world. And we also work with independent designers, and we've started our first direct-to-consumer product. We felt going direct-to-consumer allowed us to properly talk about why we do what we do and how to return it. There's a concept out there, especially with the larger companies, that they, it's called green hushing, where they don't want to talk about the claims of innovative products because it shines a light on the 99.9% of their business that might not be run that way. So,
oh, really? Green hushing, new term for us.
So it's, you know, the reason we went direct to consumer is really to control that narrative around why we're doing what we're doing, because we can't rely on necessarily the brands and retailers to do that for us.
Okay, and that's very different from your business, Lisa, because you told me that your customer is really companies, not consumers. You want to describe that?
Yeah, that's right.
Countries even, right?
Yeah, when you go into a supermarket, you typically on the edges have your produce, your fruits, your vegetables, and you have your meats and your seafood, and then the rest of the supermarket are foods with ingredients. And that's a $5.8 trillion industry, and that's really where we focus. These are places where, or these food manufacturers in particular, are looking for foods that are cost effective, that have high performance, high functionality. They can make, you know, the different types of foods with these ingredients, as well as increasingly companies are making net zero commitments. They're looking for ways to reduce their environmental footprint. And our ingredients that we make, you know, are, you know, nutritious. They really meet that cost piece. We believe, we've done a number of studies with a number of external engineering firms and food manufacturers, that when we scale, we're in the process of scaling now. We have our Air Farm, our first facility in San Leandro, California. Come by and visit and try food from air. But as we scale, we believe that we're going to be one of the lowest cost ways of making ingredients. And we are able to make a range of ingredients that have different functional properties, so you can deliver moistness or foaming, or, you know, kind of the different things that you look for if you're making bread or pastas or cereals or bars, and the sauces and other things. And then finally, the process that we're developing can be not just carbon reducing, not just carbon neutral, but actually carbon negative. So, you know, companies say, when I bring this ingredient into my supply chain, is it going to help me achieve my net zero commitments to get to carbon neutrality, or is it going to hurt? And we can do better than help. So these are the types of companies that we're working with: food manufacturers, ingredient manufacturers, and delivering on this promise.
Great. So Linnea, is there something you want to add about dealing with who's your customer? Do we know that?
I mean, we also work with other companies, so it's a B2B business model. For some reason, we have ended up shipping a lot of beers. Apparently, that's a good use case for our solution. But But we've been very fortunate to work with these companies. They have a big agenda. They want to go more sustainable. And so we've been able to be part of their solution for having more sustainable solutions.
Great. So, should we take questions from the audience? Do we have any? Because if we don't, oh, here's one. From Laura Honig, IWF Singapore. Go Singapore. Maybe it's Lucia. It's very bad eyes, Laura. Can the panel suggest ways of policing algorithms in their industry so that women are not subjected to bias? Anybody want to take that on? Algorithms.
I'll address this. It's a challenge if you think about it after the algorithms are made that we have to police them. What we really need to do is build them without bias. And
Yeah.
and how do we do that? The way we do that is we have more people at the table that are building these formulas and systems that are mindful about it, that recognize it. And how do we do that? We have more women and diversity at the table who's sitting there. And you look at some of the bigger companies that are out there now, it's really too late. Those systems are built. And every day, every moment someone uses them, those systems get stronger and stronger. And they go to a point where you can't even go back and say, okay, here's the little code that has bias embedded in it. It's almost impossible.
So it really comes back to the same place that we need to be on the front end.
We need to be in the front end. We need to be in the room. And that's why some of the best companies right now you see are co-founded by women and men. And we'll see over time how much bias is embedded in those products.
Okay.
But if we're not active right now, and if we don't call it out, it will be there. And we'll be fighting it once again.
You're so right, I'm sure. Now, there's another one from Julie England, IWF Dallas. Are you here, Julie? Somewhere? Okay. Are there any talent acquisition challenges in your companies, and do you need more engineering and tech talent? Maybe she's looking for work or for her, for her kids. So I remember, Linnea, you told me, I thought this was interesting, that there's a shortage of truck drivers. Do you also have a shortage of engineering and tech talent?
I would say that we are maybe one of those privileged, and I'm sure it's the same for you. I think that a lot of talent today want to work on a greater mission. So we've been very fortunate to be able to recruit and have a lot of people actually applying to our company from across the world that wants to move to Sweden, even though we have the long winters, just because they believe in our mission and they really want to be part. And actually, my co-founder had a quote that I think is very accurate, and that is, the best engineers in the world wants to work on the most challenging issues there is for this world. And I think solving a lot of these environmental and other sustainability issues that we have is really the challenge of our lifetime.
Do you want to respond to that?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so Stacy says she's going to respond to that too.
Yeah, we're, Deborah, you said we have to start at the beginning, we have to start at the foundation. We did that with our business as well. We said, okay, if we're going to build this from scratch, what is the ideal version we would like to see? So even from the foundation, creating the company as a social purpose corporation and a B Corp allows us to essentially run the company in alignment with our values. So I think that's really an important point, starting from the beginning. And then also, all of our garments are designed to be recyclable into same or better quality, which means our chemical and mechanical systems all had to be designed with that intent in mind to get to that end goal. We do not have a problem with the availability of people. I have an office on a houseboat in Seattle. And
how cool is that?
Which we're moving to South Carolina, so it's...
You're moving the houseboat to South Carolina.
I wish. We are not moving the houseboat, but we're moving our corporate office to South Carolina. But these kids, they'll scale the walls to try to get in or just get an informational to figure out how to align their purpose with their profession. I think that that is a huge thing right now where people are really, you know, tired of working in a soulless capacity.
They want to be at a place that has big ideas, is doing the right stuff. Amazing how this circle keeps coming back. Lisa, how about you? I would think that the same thing would be true. People would say, God, that's what I want to do with my life.
Yeah, I'd say in a challenging talent market, having a mission is a way to get people to join your company and be excited every day. And I'd say they inspire me. I just want to put that out there as well, that my team and just what they're focused on doing with their lives and how it's all coming together to this global, you know, this mission that we have jointly together as a team is very inspiring.
So Mary Kramer from IWF Michigan said, we have some billionaire women. Could they lead creation of new funds that investors like us could participate in? That's a good question. I think that's your question.
Can I start with that one by saying yesterday we had the honor of being over at NASDAQ with Plum Alley as they launched their venture company, Plum Alley Venture Company. And so definitely talk to Deborah here, please, because they're doing some amazing things.
Oh, this question is music to my ears.
I know.
So,
and we didn't plant it.
So after I left Wall Street, I founded Plum Alley, and the mission is really to deploy more capital to amazing women founders and teams of women and men. It's not just women. Most of our companies have women and men. And so we've been in business now for 8 years investing. We've deployed over $100 million into 32 different companies. These are just 3 of our companies. There are many, many more that we're so proud of. And we reached the end of last year and we said, okay, how do we grow? So we could do another fund, we could deploy maybe 150 million, but then we said, why don't we go big? And so we have a whole new strategy, which includes finding other talented women that could or should be GPs of funds by different technologies. We're putting them on our platform, we're paying them salary, because one of the biggest challenges for women becoming GPs is you don't get paid until you go raise money and then you can pay yourself.
General partner you're talking about. Mm-hmm.
General partners of a fund or managers of a fund. So we have a pretty, you know, elaborate, powerful, I shouldn't say elaborate, I should say powerful mechanism where we're looking to go. It's called incremental to exponential, to go from 100 million deployed to 1.5 billion in 5 years.
Well,
So
we'll all be cheering you on.
Our plan. We announced and had a big event at NASDAQ, and we were on the big tower yesterday, so very exciting time for us, and happy to tell you more, and hopefully everyone will be motivated either with Plum Alley or somewhere else to support these women, because we're, just for every reason, we're in a technology explosion. Technology will only be more important as we go forward, and we need these solutions, and the best solutions are technology enabled. And women, it's sort of like, you know, the stereotypes of things we used to hear in the past, like women are not good at math. That's not true. We manage our family budgets very well. And just think about it. I mean, these women are all technologists, and it's not like they're sitting there writing the code. They're actually coming up with the inventions.
The big idea.
Thinking up the solutions. And then other people on their team might be writing the code, etc. But I always like to point that out because everything starts with the idea. And these women are visionaries.
And then acting on it. And then being able to lead it. So you come to these conferences and you learn announcements like this that are really pretty big. Congratulations to you. So, thank you. Eileen Walks from Women's Forum of New York, ta-da. What is your greatest challenge in bringing your product to market? I think you've answered this a little bit, but Lisa, maybe we'd start with you.
You know, I'm going to answer this question by talking about how great of an investor Plum Alley is. You know, as an entrepreneur, there's many opportunities to, tack challenges, shall we say, as you grow, from follow-on investment to strategic partners, introductions, strategizing. I've had great strategy sessions with Deborah specifically. There's been so many introductions that have been made by that team. So as you're scaling, there's investment, there's customer traction, there's talent. Plum Valley has been phenomenal on all those fronts. So I just want to give them a shout out for investing in us and for being great investors.
Well, we should make clear that there are other people doing
Yes.
fabulous stuff in this area, but you happen to be talking to or talking with some real experts, including this one over here who's doing amazing stuff for all of us. Is there anything that I haven't asked you for?
Well, I'd like to,
answer.
we have not had the same experience with investment. I mean, I'm on the phone. First of all, I'm a textile developer, so I make clothing for a living. So when I started this company and moved into the arena where I had to raise capital, it's like speaking a different language. So, all day, every day, I'm on the phone with investors, and we get turned down a lot, and you just have to keep at it, keep at it, keep at it. But it is very challenging out there, when you're on the phone all day and you've got this great idea and you've got great people working for you. The reality is if we don't raise the capital, we're going to be out of business. And that, I think, is what really drives me, but it's a very real threat. It's challenging to get up every day and know that, you can see the end of the road and you're not at a point where you're generating revenue yet, but the alternative is not really an option, so we've got to stay with it.
So, I think that's something so many people in this room, I think all of us, can sympathize with because we've been there in businesses. Am I meeting my payroll? Am I going to do this? But my mission's so big, and the fact that you're all here says that you too didn't take no for an answer. So is there anything I haven't asked that any of you would like to add?
I mean, I would actually like to forward what Deborah told me 5 years ago, that it's been such an important advice for me and also the time that we were in our journey. And that was like, even sometimes when you feel like you're not enough and you just want to quit because, it's hard and you're facing a lot of this bias, like, don't leave your seat. Like, sit still for a while. And just, you don't always have to perform. You can actually take your time, sit still, and then it will come to you. And that has been so important for me, because I think also always having this mindset that I always have to perform to be able to show my value to the company, to the investors and everything. That was a bit overwhelming for me at that time. And so I really appreciate that.
That's powerful. So I think we should end on that note, and thank you to my terrific panelists, Lisa Dyson of Air Protein, Stacy Flynn of Evernew, Deborah Jackson of Plum Alley Investments, and Linnea Cornhead-Falk of Enride. It's been a pleasure to be with you, and I just have one thing to add. Take Linnea's last piece of advice. Don't leave your seats because you're moving on to the next session. Thank you all.